This is the oldest surviving ring in the world. It belonged to the Queen of Bling Puabi of Sumer. It was found by British archaeologists in Iraq in the jet-setting city of Ur. This ring is around 4,600 years old allegedly. If you want to see it for yourself, you can check it out in the British Museum in London. But the Sumerians were not the first people to beautify their fingers. No. The first people we know of to use rings lived in the 3rd millennium BC. They were the people of the Indus Valley civilization, and they were all the rage with their fancy finger bling. They wore rings on every finger, even their pinkies, because who doesn't love a little extra sparkle? Back in the old kingdom of Egypt, people were all about their fancy finger bling. They wore rings made from all sorts of materials, including metal and faience, which were often given as gifts for New Year. Some of the most popular designs featured scarabs. You know, those creepy crawly beetles from the Good Mummy movies with the marvelous Brendan Fraser. But as time went on, the Egyptians' love of rings spread to the neighboring Greeks, who started rocking their own versions of the accessory. The Greek rings were a bit different from the Egyptian ones, however. They tended to be less substantial and weren't used as working signet rings, you know, for sealing important documents and stuff like that, but they still had their own style. They were made from silver and bronze in the eastern colonies, while the Etruscans, these guys over here, evidently were richer and used gold for their rings. Before we go any further, let's give a quick explanation of what makes a ring a ring. So, a ring has 1. a hoop, 2. a shoulder, 3. a bezel, and 4. a gem. Easy, right? Let's move on. Although the Romans supposedly used rings as early as 8th century BC, it was during the first 2 centuries AD that the Romans' rings were characterized by their distinctive style. They typically had a thick hoop that tapered into a wider bezel, and an engraved oval gem was set into the bezel. These types of rings are now known as Hennig 2 and 3 in formal academic parlance, or simply as Roman rings to modern jewels. It's worth noting that not everyone could wear gold rings in Rome. The gold blings were reserved for the upper echelons of society. These laws relaxed with time. An interesting footnote in history is the proclamation in the year 197 AD by the Gigachat Emperor Septimius Severus, who allowed his dripping soldiers to wear gold rings, and a few centuries later, the Eastern Roman Emperor Justinian gave the freed slaves the same right to wear the golden bling blings. These are Akik rings. These bad boys usually hold a semi-precious chalcedony stone, and none other than the Islamic prophet Muhammad wore one with a silver hoop to commemorate the day he smashed the false idols from the Kaaba in Mecca in the year 630 AD. And since it was a practice of the prophet to wear one, it is considered even today a sunnah, roughly translated to the way of the prophet, which Muslims try to emulate. This ring of Muhammad allegedly had a seal, making it a signet ring also. On the seal it read Allah Muhammad Rasul, which means God, Muhammad Messenger. This ring was inherited by the Prophet's companions, but Uthman III of the Rashidun Caliphs accidentally dropped it off in a well in Medina. You know, it happens. Uthman is said to have made a replica of the seal, and supposedly when Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent conquered Baghdad in 1534, found it there. And this replica of the seal is showcased even today in Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, not Constantinople. Later, during the Middle Ages, it was all the rage to pile on as many rings as possible. People wore them on every finger, trying to outdo each other with the most bling, and the bigger the gemstone, the better. It was like a never-ending game of ring one-upmanship. But these rings weren't just for show, oh no. People actually believed that certain gems had magical powers that could protect or help the wearer in some way. Like, if you wore a ruby, for example, it would keep you safe from danger. I guess new agey things aren't as new agey as we might think. One interesting ring in history is the ring of the fisherman, dating from the 13th century. It is worn only by the Pope to this day. It is used to seal letters that hold private conversations only. This is what people smooch when they meet the Pope. If you wanted to get all fancy, you could even get a ring with an engraved message. These were usually written in some fancy script like Lombardic or Gothic. Some of these inscriptions were all spiritual and deep, rivaling Instagram models and Deepak Chopra, while others were more romantic in nature. And during this time, if you really wanted to impress your bae, you'd write the message in French because, you know, well, it's the language of love.
Your uncle mows your tuna.
I guess just some things never change. Speaking of love, in the 16th and 17th century, a new fashion dropped, the so-called Gimmal rings. These rings consisted of 2 interlocking hoops that could be separated and worn by the engaged couple until their wedding day. During the wedding, the hoops would be rejoined to be worn as a single ring. These rings date back to at least the 14th century, but it took a century or two for them to be noticed by the cool kids. One of these rings was bestowed upon an unremarkable nun called Katharina von Bora. She, however, ran away from a convent in Germany in secrecy with some other nuns, with the help of none other than Martin Luther, the head honcho of the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther begged for the parents of the nuns to receive their girls back home, but they were scared since they would be committing crime under canon law. Martin Luther, the gentleman that he was, within 2 years arranged homes, marriages, and employed all of the nuns except for the black sheep Katharina. See, it was not that Katharina was not desirable by historical standards at least, for she apparently had many suitors, ranging from chief magistrates of entire towns to pastors. But the problem was that Katharina fancied none of them. She confided in Nikolaus von Amsdorf, a friend and fellow reformer of Luther, that if she were to marry, she would only settle for Nikolaus or Luther himself. A predicament arose for Martin Luther. He was unsure whether he should be married altogether. Some reformers said that it would hurt the Reformation movement. Luther jumped the gun and brushed aside all these negative people from his life, and in his own words said that his marriage would please his father, rile the Pope, cause the angels to laugh and the devils to weep, and so he married Katharina in 1525, giving her a gimmel ring in the process, with the inscription, "Whom God has joined together, let no man put asunder." One curious ring is the Ifland ring. This ring is a sparkling diamond-encrusted piece of jewelry that is imbued with the magical powers of acting greatness. It is said to have belonged to the legendary performer of the late 18th century August Wilhelm Ifland, who was known throughout the land for his spellbinding performances on the stage. The Ifland ring can only be passed down from one actor to another, which means that the current holder of the ring is believed to be the most talented and worthy actor in all of the German-speaking theater, as chosen by the previous holder. And since 2019, that lucky guy is Jens Harzer. He apparently has won a number of other awards too, so I guess when it rains, it does pour. Throughout the ages, people got really creative with their rings, inventing so many styles of rings that it is hard to keep track of. I'll just give you a few examples. Are you ready? Let's go. Birthstone rings, Cladar rings, class rings, cocktail ring, Clorinth rings, doctoral ring, ecclesiastical ring, eternity ring, eye ring, giardinieri ring, Havel's ring, key ring, Leo ring, memento mori ring, mood ring, morning ring, mother's ring, multi-finger ring, penannual ring, poison ring, posy ring, portrait ring, prison ring, promise ring, purity ring, puzzle ring, regards ring, rosary ring, suing ring, the one ring, technology ring, sonic rings, and gajillion other styles of rings. Whew. Look, as long as people have fingers, they're going to loop metals around them. It's just the thing we do. And even in today's economy, the rings market is expected to grow by a staggering $54 million by the year 2026. See, the hearts of men are easily corrupted, so you might as well give in to Isildur's bane and just let Sauron control the elves and all the other peoples of Middle Earth. You might as well just